the phalanx and so on. They allowed the Greeks to sort of manhandle the natives. This is our city. If you mess with our city, we will destroy your village. You know, that type of thing. The advantages of colonial expansion had become obvious, and the chief powers of the Mediterranean were determined to gain as much as possible for themselves. This is much like the colonial expansion of the 16, 17, 1800s of Europe, you know. In the beginning, some of the Greek states carved out for themselves spheres of influence, though all too frequently in the future they were to clash. In the planting of a colony, apoika, that's A-P-O-I-K-I-A, the Greeks gradually developed a body of customs to which they felt morally bound. Generally speaking, the founding city, metropolis, after obtaining the sanction of the Delphic Apollo, appointed a noble as founder to conduct the colonists to their new home, establish the government, and after death receive worship as a hero. We were mentioning this with the other author. Often an invitation was issued to friendly neighbors to take part. A charter of incorporation was drawn up, which constituted the proposed settlement as a community, named the founder, provided for the assignment of land and for other necessary matters, and regulated the relations between the mother and daughter cities. The tie was fundamentally one of kinship, such as binds parents and children. The strong bond of festivals in the reciprocal rights and honors extended by each community to the members of the other, and in the general continuity of religious, social, and political usages, institutions of the old city and the new. A colony in the neighborhood of the mother state usually remained politically dependent. This would be true, too, of the special Athenian settlements of the 5th century known as klerouches, C-L-E-R-U-C-H-I-E-S. The decentralizing tendencies were so strong, however, that distant colonies became forthwith sovereign states, yet united with the mother state. So the city-states were so independent, even the colonies they sent out weren't dependent on them. Although there was some form of dependence that has to be acknowledged, and it was, quote, the firmest bond of alliance known to the Greeks. Nothing was firmer than the fact that this city was founded by colonists from that city. So these two cities are linked really strongly, firmer than any other bond they knew. The colonial movement tended to widen interests beyond the narrow limits of city-state. Yeah, right down to 2 city-states. And more, because, it's a widening influence, but it's just the narrow outlook of that city-state view is bizarre. The single limitation, some people have called it, to the Greeks. Certain states were particularly active in sending out colonies. The general direction taken by these new colonies was to the North Aegean, to the Black Sea and its approaches, North Africa, to the west, to Sicily, Italy, southern France, and Spain. Colonists from Chalkis were the first to go to Italy, and about the year 750 they planted a colony near the Bay of Naples, first on the island of Pitacusia, then on the mainland at Cumaea. Afterward, with some Athenians, the Cumaeans established Naples nearby. Cumaea was the first Greek center of culture with which the Romans came into contact. Cumae, C-U-M-A-E, was the first Greek center of culture the Romans came into contact with. Thence they borrowed religious ideas, especially the cult of Apollo, and the art of writing. They got the alphabet from the Greeks. Indeed, from the Grai, G-R-A-I, who had gone out with the Chalcidians as colonists. This is a people, a township people, some people, settlers. The Romans derived the word by which to designate the whole Greek race. So there were some people that went out with the Chalcidians, and the Romans met up with these colonists, and the Romans were like, what is your people's name? And these people who came with them were like, we're the Grai, G-R-A-I, Grai. And so the Romans were like, Yeah, Greek. These are Greek people. Yeah. The Greeks, whenever they thought of themselves as one people as a whole, called themselves the Hellens. Hellens, from Hellenic history. Helen of Troy. Now, the book I'm reading from again is Hellenic History by Botsford and Robinson. Now, Sparta acquired Messenia, and its acquisition of Messenia so satisfied Sparta's need for land that she sent out no further colonies. Tarentum had an excellent harbor in the instep of Italy, northeast of Sybaris. The settlers wrested from the native Iapygians a wide tract of land where they farmed and raised sheep. Equally important were fishing and the preparation of purple dye. The Tarentines developed a great industry in weaving and dyeing fine woolens as well as in vase making. They exported their wares throughout the peninsula. So many Greeks settled in southern Italy that it was called Magna Graecia, Major Greece or Greater Greece. One of the greatest colonizing states was Corinth, and among her foundations, perhaps the greatest was Syracuse, destined to become in her day the most populous and strongly fortified city in Europe. Archias, a noble sailing from Corinth, proceeded to Sicily, where in 734 he founded Syracuse on the island of Ortygia, and soon the city expanded to the mainland, where the surrounding country was worked by the native population, the Sicels, who had been reduced to serfdom. As the ships of the Greeks developed from small, round-bottomed boats to a somewhat longer type, with flatter bottoms, furnished with 50 oars and armed with a bronze beak for attack, navigation even further west became easy. The Samians, and more especially the Phocians, voyaged from Asia Minor to Spain for gold, silver, and copper. I will pause there to talk for a second about the earliest ships, the evolution of boats into ships. Now I'm just going to read you a couple paragraphs because this isn't part of Greek history, this is part of engineering. And this book, I think, will get a pretty good treatment in my History of Ancient Engineering. Sailing Ships of the Mediterranean, Ancient Mediterranean, Chapter 3, and we'll just take two little paragraphs here that are fun. By the 11th millennium BC, that's 10,000 plus years before Christ, 10,000 BC. Remember, the pyramids are built in 2600s BC, the big main ones that we think of, the 7,300 and some years before the pyramids. At that time, men had boats in which they were able to get from the Greek mainland to the island of Melos, M-E-L-O-S, to bring home the distinctive obsidian that was found there. This was before the Bronze or Iron Age began, wasn't it? So, one of the reasons given for the rise out of hunter-gatherer squalor was the fact that we got metal, that we achieved the use of bronze and then iron. So pre-bronze, what was a commodity? Particular types of stone. The obsidian seekers paddled themselves over the waters they crossed, and for many thousands of years thereafter muscle continued to be the sole force available to make a boat move. Then, sometime in the 4th millennium BC, came the breakthrough that revolutionized maritime history and determined its course right up to the last century, the invention of the sail. The earliest evidence for it is a picture on an Egyptian vase, circa 3500 BC, 800 or 900 years before the pyramids were built, the big three pyramids. That shows a long and slender vessel with a square sail mounted on a pole mast, stepped forward in the bows. The earliest ships, Conway's History of the Ship, Chartwell Books Incorporated. Kind of scholarly, sort of scholarly. Now then, the Samians, and more especially the Phocians, voyaged from Asia Minor to Spain. So there's trade going on in that direction. Beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the distant Britain yielded tin, a metal chiefly prized as an ingredient of bronze. The Phoenicians, however, stoutly resisted Greek penetration beyond Gibraltar. So they